You don't have to weigh anything out. This is the ultimate recipe with no special equipment. You didn't need a scale or anything. Welcome back. I am making more sourdough. If you're new here, I'm Kathryn, the Aerogarden Homesteader, and today it's a different sourdough recipe. This one is actually, if you saw my no equipment one, this one is the ultimate no equipment. You don't have to weigh anything out. So what I need to do is I need to warm up some water. I will need, so this is just to make one loaf, but the recipe, it's my grandmother's recipe. I actually modified it to take sourdough as a starter. So I'm just going to make half of it so it makes one loaf. I'm going to start with 1 cup of water and about 1 tablespoon of butter, give or take. You could probably put a little bit more in. And I'm going to warm that up in the microwave just to get it to, like about 100 degrees. Now while that's warming up, I am going to put in 2 cups of flour to start. And then I will also need to put in some vital wheat gluten as well as some salt. Calls for about a tablespoon of sugar as well, so I'm going to put that in. I'm just going to use the same cup. It's a 1/4 cup. Don't feel like you have to use the vital wheat gluten. I used 100% all-purpose flour the first time I made this, and it turns out just as well. I'm going to get some salt. Oops. Okay, what about a teaspoon of salt, give or take. Okay, for this particular recipe I am using buttermilk powder. You can use milk, you can just use water, you can use whatever liquid you want. Now the problem with my buttermilk powder, of course, is that it's very chunky. I don't know why. So I want to put in, let me see, I need a cup of milk. So if I'm going to do a cup of buttermilk, I need 2½ tablespoons. You could probably actually put in sour cream with thinned with milk, or Greek yogurt, same thing, thinned with milk. Okay, so get that mixed around a little bit. This is terrible for mixing powder with. That is a little on the warm side, but I am hoping that by the time the butter melts, it'll be a good spot. Okay, I don't normally check the temperature of my water, but I do want to make sure that it's not too hot, since it did feel really hot, because I'm going to be adding my sourdoughs directly to this. So yeah, that's a bit hot. Now I know it seems like I just keep going through and trying different sourdough recipes, like I haven't found the one I like, and in a way that's kind of true. I feel like there's something missing from the bread and I'm not sure what it is. This one comes really, really close. It's like it's missing the bread pull. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but like, when you pull bread apart and you get that long pull of bread. The breads that I've been making so far haven't really had that. This one comes really, really close, and for some strange reason, once it's been frozen and thawed, it loses that consistency, which probably has something more to do with the freezing of the bread than the actual bread itself. But when this bread is fresh, it's got the bread pull. It is a really good bread, and I was kind of surprised because I just made it on a whim. It's my grandmother's bread recipe. It does actually call for a pinch of ginger. It's not written down in the recipe. My grandmother didn't even write it down in the recipe. She just randomly throws it in, and my aunt caught her doing it one time. It's the only reason why we knew she put ginger in. So if you feel like putting in a pinch of ginger, go ahead and do that. I couldn't find my ginger, so I'm not doing it. I don't know how much of a difference it makes, and I'm sick right now, so I can't even test it to see if adding the ginger will make a difference. But there are some old-fashioned bread recipes that do call for, like, 5-spice, not Chinese 5-spice, but there's like this 5-spice powder you can put in, and I've seen people add that to bread. And it probably does add a little bit of, you know, a little something to the bread that people probably miss and don't even realize. Okay, I'm going to clean my spoon off real quick because I don't want to contaminate my sourdough. I think this has cooled down enough. Okay, so I have slightly more than a cup of liquid in my measuring cup. I need 1 cup of sourdough. So I will just make this slightly more than 2 cups total. Now in modifying this recipe, I did take into account that the sourdough is adding flour, but I did not take into account that the sourdough is adding liquid. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I have enough that I can just add more and feed this. So I'm going to keep this spoon to feed my sourdough later. And I probably will need more flour. I'm just going to try to break this up a little bit. Normally I do this in the bowl, but in order to save a step and speed things up just a little bit, I am going to just do it in the cup here. Now this dough, the way I've been making it, and I think it's because, again, it's got a little extra liquid in it, I have been making it a little more on the sticky side than I'm sure it probably was originally, and I can't ask my grandmother. She's not around anymore. I can't ask her how her dough texture was. This is not a recipe I learned how to make from her. I am literally just learning how to make it from the cookbook. We made a family cookbook a few years back, and, you know, that's how I have learned about some of the recipes from the family. So, let's get this in there. Now, because this is kind of a wet dough, it does call for more of a slap and fold technique to get it to come together. And I find that it's best to bring it together completely instead of doing stretches and folds and like the long overnight bulk fermentations that other sourdoughs call for. It actually comes together really nicely if you just do the slap and folds and build all your gluten right from the beginning. Okay, this calls for 5 to 6 cups of flour total for 2 loaves of bread. I started with 2.5, 2 1/4 because of the vital wheat gluten. Plus it's got a 1/2 cup from the starter. So I'm going to probably add in another 1/2 cup over time just to see. Now this really is by feel. You want it to be a slightly sticky dough. Don't know what caused that to come apart. I'm going to have to get some glue in there. Okay, so this is really sticky. It's also really shaggy. So this will definitely take a bit more. But I don't want to add too much. I don't want this to be dry. Probably once I start feeling better, there is a bowl cover I want to make for this bowl. I'll probably take you along for it. This is not a sewing channel, but you know what? We should know how to make things for ourselves when we're doing homesteading stuff. So I'll probably take you along to show you how I sew a cover for this bowl, because it's something I have always wanted to do, and I don't see a lot of other people kind of doing stuff like that, so I thought that might be something interesting to do. I'm really close. It's almost cleaning the sides of the bowl, but not quite. Okay. Now I've cleaned the bowl as best I can. I will put a little bit of oil in here, and then I will get this kneaded up. Now, what the best way to do this is to knead this a little bit, bring it together, and then invert the bowl over it and let it sit and rest for 10 minutes. At that point you want to oil your bowl. And then you want to knead it until you get full gluten development. So see, it is sticky, but it's not super sticky right now. Okay? So I'm going to let this sit and rest for 10 minutes, and then I will be back and show you how to do a full knead on that.
A few moments later.
Okay, 10 minutes. I'm going to get some oil in the bowl, and then I'm going to show you how to knead that. Okay, it's just a small amount, maybe a teaspoon and a half. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty sticky dough. It will start sticking to the counter. But when that happens, I generally turn to the slap and fold technique. And that helps bring the dough together. But if you can do it this way, that's fine. So you can knead this way, you can do the traditional two-handed technique, just whatever is comfortable for you. If it starts getting sticky, I like to slap it down. You have to pull to develop the gluten, and then you fold it over. Turn, slap, pull. So this isn't as sticky as it normally is, so I will just continue kneading it this way. And I want to go for 10 minutes. I want it to be nice and smooth. So you see right now it's not a smooth dough. It's kind of tearing a little as I'm pulling it. There's going to be no gluten formation. After 10 minutes, or until I get a good sort of window pane, smooth, elastic dough, is when I want to go. Whatever amount of time that takes. Sometimes it takes longer than others. It just depends. But just knead it until it feels elastic. I'll probably skip ahead. You don't need to hear me getting winded while trying to knead this dough. I am still, this cold is whooping my butt. The grunge that's going around, it's not a cold, but you know what I mean. It's just knocking me back. Okay, so it is a lot of work up front, but that's all the work up front. Like, I literally just have to let this sit overnight, let this rest. In the morning I will shape it and put it in the oven once it's doubled. So if you have a warmer kitchen / house than I do, it's currently winter right now, and we're actually in a cold snap, a really cold snap. You might be able to get away with less than a cup of sourdough, so obviously adjust your flour accordingly. I would probably start backing mine off as summer approached, but we're in deep winter right now with a major freeze on, so 1 cup is working for me. So this is nice and smooth, it's supple, bounces back. See, it's got a nice bounce back to it. It's giving a nice, rather nice window pane. It does not have to be perfect. You will get some gluten forming as it rests. So that is going to be about, I don't know, 18 hours or so. I will see you once it has doubled. So now I just put it in the bowl. I put it in upside down. I spin it around just to sort of spread the oil around a little. I put some on the sides, and then I flip it over, and there we go. I'm going to cover this with saran wrap. One of these days I will make a cover for this, and I will show you how to do that. But I'm not feeling good right now, so it's not going to happen right away. But I'm going to get this, try to find a warm spot for it, but that's probably not going to happen. So I'll show you how it looks in about 18 hours. It has been 16 hours for this, and I am going to get it pre-shaped and then shape it for the pan. So I will save the saran wrap because I can use that on the pan. So get some nice rising out of that. I'm going to knead it a little bit. This will help knock all the bubbles out. This way I don't get any big air pockets or anything like that. Brings it all together. Ooh, that is cold. And make a nice tight ball. And then I'm going to let that sit for about 5 to 10 minutes to let the gluten development that I just sort of tightened up, I'm going to let it relax a little bit, and that will make it easier to shape for the pan. In the meantime, I can grease the pan, get the pan ready. Okay, it's been 10 minutes, almost. I think it's been 8 minutes. So it has relaxed a little, but not very much. I have my pans all nicely greased. So the shaping for this is now pretty easy. I just sort of tighten it up again, but I keep it in a log shape now. That's pretty much it. Pretty easy. And then I just transfer it to the pan, And I want to put the sheet on the plastic wrap. So there's two ways to go with this. You can spray this with non-stick spray so it doesn't stick to your loaf. The problem is you will get some of that oil on top and it will create like a bit of a shiny sheen. If you don't like that, you can always dust it with some flour. I will just probably cover this with a little bit of non-stick spray just to prevent sticking, and I will let this rise. It'll probably take, well, it depends on how warm your kitchen is. Mine's pretty cold. It's probably going to take about 4 hours, maybe 6, depending. We're in a deep freeze today again. So I'm just going to play it by ear and we'll just see how long it takes. Alright, so it's been about 3 hours and I've got nice rise this way, and it's just crusting the top of the loaf pan. So, and I did do a poke test and it did pop back out, but it's springing back slowly. So if it had sprung back really fast, it still had time to go, and if it doesn't spring back at all, it means it's been over-risen. So hopefully I have it in the right spot. So this is my no special equipment. This is the ultimate recipe with no special equipment. You didn't need a scale or anything, so like literally, if you got measuring cups in a loaf pan, you can do this. Even if you don't have a loaf pan, you could probably do this in something else. So I just sort of form it to the bottom of the pan, and then I just take it off and flip it over. It will go in a 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes with the cover on, and then I take the cover off and I go for about another 15 minutes or so. Pretty much you want the internal temperature to be about 200, and that will render the bread safe. There we go. So I just crimp it around. This might be the last time I'll be able to use this tin foil. It's starting to rip a little bit. But there we go. I will show you how this turns out when it comes out of the oven. Okay, so we demolished about half of this loaf just for lunch. It really is a very nice loaf of bread. I highly recommend you give it a try. I feel like all of the bread I have made, all of the different loaves, are very good, but this one, I like this one a little bit more, and I think it's because it's got that sort of bread pull that I'm looking for. Now, I do believe I may have underproofed it just a little bit. I had a little separation in the top of my loaf here, but you know, that doesn't affect the taste. That's just more of an aesthetic thing. I have found that this loaf lasts for about a day and a bit on the counter before it starts staling a little, and I'm sure part of that is because I go through and I cut all of the pieces so that they're just available to eat. If I chose to just cut as needed, it probably wouldn't stale quite as quickly, but this is just how I do it. I will leave this on the counter overnight, and then tomorrow I will probably put this in the fridge. I do hope you give this recipe a try. This was my grandmother's recipe. It turned out it's a very nice recipe. Makes a wonderful sourdough, and it's got a really nice crumb to it. But yeah, give it a try. I hope you give this recipe a try. I'll have some more recipes up at the end that you might enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time on the Aerogarden Homestead.